can't do the signing with this in my hand.
Makes it hard. For our call to worship, you are invited to use your hands and your voices. Your cue is, and we say, and your response is, we are here. I'll do it this way. Okay, let's try that again. And I have it on authority. My secretary is part of the deaf community, and she said you may use your dominant hand. So sign language is ambidextrous. So we are here. Okay? Got it?
Come, whoever you are. And we say, we are here.
Wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, it doesn't matter. And we say, we are here.
Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times. And we say,
we are here.
Here.
Come yet again. Come. Come together, and we say, we are here. If they change this one.
Seated. Let us pray. Almighty God, maker of all things,
make your face shine upon us.
Jesus Christ, Redeemer of the world,
have mercy on us.
Holy Spirit, giver of life,
open our hearts.
With thanks to God, who made heaven and earth, Let go of the effort and stress of travel. Enfolded by Christ the Good Shepherd, give into his loving care those who have been left behind. Trusting the gifts of the Spirit for the people of God, let go all anxiety about things left undone. Grasping the promises of God, acknowledge any fears that hold you back, and pray God's blessing on this our time together. In this place and in this space, we are invited to start anew, and so we do. And all God's people say,
Amen.
Amen.
In the minutes and hours that we spend together over the next couple of days, Psalm 23 will be walking with us. It will weave in and out of our worship time. The setting that we are using is written by Marty Hagen, and he has taken all of those words of Psalm 23 and put it into a single chorus that summarizes it up so beautifully. It's a chorus that we'll be singing over and over again, and I hope that you will be able to breathe it in, to allow it to guide all of our deliberations and conversations. And perhaps long after we leave this place, that chorus can accompany you on your journey of life. Let us begin. The chorus is on the screen, or you can also turn to number 473 in the hymnal if you would like. Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life. And the chorus again. Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life. God is my shepherd, there's nothing I shall want. I rest in the meadows of faithfulness and love. I walk by the quiet waters of peace. Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life. Let's do the chorus again. Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life. Gently, gently and heal my weary soul. You lead me in pathways of righteousness and truth. My spirit shall sing the wonder of your name. Shepherd me, O God, beyond my wants, beyond my fears, from death into life.
In silence, you are invited to reflect on one or both of the following questions. Where are you seeking life? Where do you seek life? And or, where are you seeing new life? Take some time and reflect on either or both of those two questions. Where are you seeking life? Where are you seeing new life? I forgot to mention there's going to be a test. I want you to turn to your neighbors and share just a bit of your reflection with the person sitting beside you. If there's three of you together, the three of you can talk. This is an easy one for me. We have a woman that's been hanging outside the church last two, 3 years. And the first time she came by, I took her to the hospital. The veins were so contracted. And she has now celebrated a year. Just turned her life around. And then that has sparked. So another guy that's been out to church, he just went to the and he saw Sandra. He was like, I got to do this. He spent the night outside make sure he'd be there the next morning. So that's been really fun. It is. And Sandra agreed to go in for treatment. We were just ecstatic. 100 more to go. So she gave you the question as you chose her? No, actually, she gave me to choose. Oh, okay. Let us continue in prayer. Buoyed by your living waters, we are at peace in the seas of stress and success. Detoured on to those walkways leading to our joy, we find our way out of the mazes of meetings and deadlines. Nourished at your picnic in that garden of grace, our shredded souls are anointed by your healing. You slow us down just enough as we try to escape the very lives we think we want, so that goodness and mercy can catch up with us and carry us into your heart. And we thank you. And all God's people said, Amen.
Try to pretend you're not Presbyterian. patience and grace,
with humility and joy,
with hope and faith.
let our worship continue. And all God's people say, oh, that's you.
That's all right. All God's people said, amen.
Amen.
Fellow presbyters, I am off script here, but if you are parked in front of the church, and in fact, if you were parked in a meter that was broken so you didn't have to pay, they came and fixed that meter, thanks be to God. So license plate 89285 might want to move their car soon before, hopefully it hasn't been ticketed yet. So, and if your car is out there, you're going to have to feed those meters or find a place without a meter. That concludes my parking report.
The assembly will come to order. Mr. Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Mr. Moderator, yes, we do, in fact, have a quorum here.
Thank you very much. The meeting is convened. Welcome to this absolutely fabulous stated meeting of the Presbytery of the Cascades here in Roseburg, Oregon. My name is Mike Gillespie. I'm the moderator this year. And before we begin our business, we'd like to welcome those of you who are here for the first time. If you are near a ruling elder that you know who is here for the first time, we invite you to introduce that ruling elder. Or if you are a ruling elder here for the first time, we invite you to rise if able and introduce yourself. Please give your name and the church.
My
Yes.
name is Jeff Siebert of the Reedville Presbyterian Church. I'd like to introduce Rob Christ, who has been a commissioner in the past and is returning as such.
Ryan Malmquist from Ashland First Presbyterian. This is my wife, Ruth Ann.
Welcome. Anyone else? Yes. Welcome. Welcome. You're in trouble now, right? Anyone else? Okay, now if you're a minister member of the Presbytery that you know who is here for the first time, we invite you to introduce that minister, or if you are a minister and are here for the first time and would like to introduce yourself, we invite you to do so now.
I'm Mark McElroy. I'm the new senior pastor at Lakeville Presbyterian Church.
Welcome.
I'm Hoeksema, the newly called pastor at Community Presbyterian Church of Redmond. You can save your questions for a few hours.
Welcome. Anybody else? We also welcome presbyters, whether teaching elders or ruling elders in good standing who are serving on other governing bodies of this church or who are members of another Christian church to this meeting. Presbytery custom allows seating of these visitors as corresponding members, granting them voice but no vote in the proceedings. Mr. Clerk, have you been notified of individuals to be seated as corresponding members at this meeting of the Presbytery? It's not working?
I may have turned it off. I not only am not, I feel like I should be aware of someone. Is there someone here we would like to seat as a correspondent? Yes.
Brian Heron, Minister of Word and Sacrament, not yet installed as presbyter yet, but I would like to welcome the Reverend Brandon Austin in absentia. He will be our installation preacher later this afternoon. He's had a whirlwind week. He had 3 deaths this week, and so he is back at the motel resting a little bit, but he will be here in time. The Reverend Brandon Austin will be arriving before 5 o'clock.
Great, thank you. That's the Reverend Brandon Austin, and he will be introduced a little more fully at the time of worship this evening. All right. Are we aware of any other individuals to be seated as corresponding members? Is there any objection to this one person being seated as a corresponding member? If not, then it is so ordered. Are there any other visitors that we can recognize at this time? Somebody you'd like to introduce that's maybe here just out of curiosity? You know, it's an interesting way to spend an afternoon, right? Yeah, the meter reader is the meter reader here. Okay, we'll move on then. The next item of business is to adopt the docket. The docket can be found on pages 1 through 3 of the background papers. Hopefully you've reviewed those, or enough of you have reviewed those before the meeting that we can proceed. This motion comes from the Presbytery Leadership Commission and does not require a second. The motion reads, to adopt the docket as distributed and authorize the moderator to make such adjustments as may be necessary. Is there any discussion of this motion? Are you ready for the question? Yes. Shall we adopt the docket as distributed and authorize the moderator to make such adjustments as may become necessary? All those in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed say no. The motion carries. The docket is adopted and the moderator is empowered. Does that sound good? Okay. Now we move on to the church celebration. I invite Reverend Vicki Brown to come forward to bring greetings and provide an orientation to the facilities, as well as to share about the ministries of First Presbyterian Church.
We do have ardent meter readers in Roseburg, so sorry about that. We tried to negotiate free parking and they wouldn't do it. Welcome to Roseburg. One of the first things that I would like to thank the Presbytery for are the new screens in the sanctuary. Big thanks to Steve Parker, who's way up in the back, who was a consultant from the Presbytery who helped with the project, and for a technology grant from the Presbytery, which helped with the cost of purchasing the equipment and the installation. So. And today is the first day that I've seen a picture on the screen, so it's pretty fun. So this congregation was founded in 1873. The original building was 2 blocks to the north and west of this location. This sanctuary was built in 1909, and the adjoining 3-story building where you registered and had lunch, some of you, was completed in the 50s. And Doug, I'm not sure or Marianne, if you remember exactly when, but in the 1950s, they took down the manse and made that 3-story addition. So please watch your step as you're going around the building, because codes and ideas were different in those eras, and there are some uneven steps and there are some interesting angles that you will find. So just take your time when you're walking around the building in unfamiliar space. This congregation is known in the community for its hospitality. We do a lot of welcoming outside groups to use this space, as well as our own congregation. We also have a long history of nourishing body, mind, and spirit. And I will show some slides that have to do with that. We are one of 5 churches in the community that founded, and now 6 that continue to support the local food pantry. It's called The Fish. That shows the founding document. Okay, the Fish Pantry. We've also developed relationships with the local school district, and at least 3 times a year we fill snack bags of long-keeping foods that are handed out on Fridays by the different school counselors to children, students who might not have enough food over the weekend. And an interesting thing they've noticed is not only is there higher attendance on Friday at school, but there's also higher attendance on Monday since that project has begun several years ago. We do a lot of things in conjunction with other churches in the area. Vacation Bible School this summer was at Faith Lutheran Church, and we combined our efforts there. We are a learning congregation, and we offer a variety of classes and book groups and opportunities to explore and deepen our faith. Last Sunday was Reformation Sunday, and we had visits from Martin Luther and John Calvin and John Knox. And it was a lot of fun, and we learned more about the history of our faith. This year, we have some new things, and one of those is that we have a recent college graduate, Audrey Taylor, who's serving as a young adult volunteer, a YAV, in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And I saw her a few weeks ago. She was home due to the death of her grandmother. And she said that it is the most wonderful opportunity, and she hopes to encourage many more participants from the Northwest, because I guess there aren't a lot of YAVs from the Pacific Northwest. And so she just wanted to tell everyone that it is a wonderful opportunity, and she's really learning a lot. We also began Stephen Ministry this year. This is a picture of the first class of Stephen ministers that have now begun to meet with their care receivers, and that is a wonderful new development in the congregation. We also have a lot of artists and a lot of interest in liturgical art and creativity. You are surrounded this afternoon by the Communion of Saints. These were created over a period of a few months in a variety of retreats and workshops from torn magazines. And I invite you to explore those more closely. An artist in the congregation drew the outlines, and then we filled them in kind of like paint by number, except it's a little more complicated than that. We have recently transformed a third-floor classroom into an art gallery and have an artist in residence this month. She will be up in the gallery space on the third floor during the coffee break and tomorrow morning after the open space time. We have a lot of music in the congregation, and we have a series of Fridays during Lent when we have lunch downstairs and then music here in the sanctuary. We call it Lenten lunches and Lenten meditations. And this is part of a flute choir that performs. And you'll get to hear Pat and her sister Marianne in the morning at worship tomorrow playing the flute. And the bells. So, music is a large part of what we do, as well as other things that we are trying to do to reach out from beyond our walls out into the community. Last year we had a flowering cross on Easter morning outside the front doors for anyone to stop by and place a flower in the cross. And then Roseburg has an annual tradition of a Niwala parade. That's Halloween spelled backwards. And it's in the afternoon of Halloween, and so we sang pumpkin carols outside as we passed out. So we are continually seeking new ways to reach out beyond our walls and extend the love of God into our community. And we welcome you to Roseburg.
Thank you, Vicki. Let us pray for this congregation. O faithful one, we thank you for how you have kept faith with this congregation for many generations and how they have kept faith with you. We rejoice in their witness to this community, their partnership with other people of faith, their creativity in seeking your will in this time and place. Bless their leadership and the church, visible and invisible, the church that was and is to be. Through Christ we pray. Amen. The next item of business is the consent agenda, which is a way to quickly handle routine and non-controversial business matters so that we can devote more time to other, more complicated or more controversial matters. The consent agenda is on the screen, and more detail can be found on page 4 of the background papers. If you see an item In the consent agenda that you would like to discuss or to oppose, simply call out the number of the item. The clerk will remove it so that it can be discussed during the clerk's report and the vote taken then. Are there any items that you wish to remove?
Number 2.
Number 2, are there any other items to be removed? Okay. Removed items will be taken up during the stated clerk's report later in this meeting. The consent agenda now includes items 1, 3, and 4, and 5. If there's no objection, the consent agenda is adopted. Any objection? Okay, it is adopted. The next item of business is the report of the Committee on Representation. I would call forth Chair Manny Herr to present their report.
Nancy and Eva.
Do you want to sit behind him? Okay.
Mr. Moderator, I am Manny Herr, ruling elder from the Vancouver Korean Congregation and chair of the Committee on Representation. Here today I am joined by 2 other members of the committee, Eva Clark and Nancy Smith. Eva is a long-term member of the committee, and then she also serves as the Synod Corps chair. Nancy is a new member. She's new to the Committee on Representation, and I couldn't be more happy to have her, because one expertise we sorely didn't have and we sought was experience in the nominating committee, and she brings a wealth of experience from the nominating committee. And we have another member, Chris Voss Rothmeyer. He couldn't join us at this portion of the meeting because he has a full-time job and couldn't get out of the Friday obligations, but he will lead our open space tomorrow morning on racial awareness. So I hope many of you will join him and make him feel welcome to the Committee on Representation. And we have a couple of other members who are not here. Okay. On to my presentation. We as a presbytery make a lot of decisions. We gather together and make decisions, and we follow the Book of Order, and we also for parliamentary procedures, we follow Robert's Rules of Order. And decisions we make and conventions that we built up over the years become how we make decisions. So I call them collectively our decision-making practices. One of the responsibilities that my committee has is to look at those decision-making practices of the presbytery and make sure that those practices allow for representation and full participation. That's a humble responsibility we take very seriously. And from the personal perspective, I've been coming to the presbytery meetings for the last 5 years, and only now I feel familiar enough to comment on these decision-making practices. So over the last couple of years, we have accumulated a few suggestions and recommendations regarding how we do what we do, decision-making. Okay. The first item of interest the first item of interest is the meeting time, when we meet to do, when we meet for our stated meeting. Our current practice is our meeting is centered around Friday afternoon. The issue with that is people like Chris, who have a full-time job, aren't able to come to the main portion of this Presbytery meeting. So the suggestion that we're making, and there's something we want this body to consider, is half the meetings maintain the current schedule, but for maybe perhaps the other half, we center our meetings around Saturday morning, so people with full-time jobs are able to attend the main portion of the Presbytery meetings. I think that's a reasonable suggestion. I hope you'll consider it. Oh, by the way, these are all draft recommendations. After we make these recommendations, we will collect your feedback and reactions, and come June, we'll make a firm recommendation. So these are just the dialogue starters. The second item of interest is what I term the participation history. Okay, it's who we have in our meetings and who served on our committees and when they did that. And current practice is we do collect this information informally, but we typically do not disclose this information. And we're making a recommendation that we do disclose the attendance history, such as, first, attendance record of individual clergy members. Second, ruling elder attendance of each congregation. The third one is leadership participation of each congregation, people who sit on committees and commissions and boards. They open up possibilities. For those who do not attend, we can reach out and find out why they're not attending. And for those congregations who do not participate in leadership roles, again, we can reach out and perhaps make suggestions that they serve on leadership capacity. So I think it's a valuable information, and seeing your name show up on our published record and listing you as not having ever attended one of these meetings, well, I think that's going to be an incentive for you to come. Okay, third item of interest is with regard to the Presbytery-wide leadership seats, so seats on committees, commissions, and boards. The current practice is we distribute these positions or seats equally among 4 regions. And that's based on this assumption that is no longer valid, that these 4 regions are roughly equal size. The issue with this is that assumption is no longer valid. If we turn to the next slide, I have compiled our basic membership statistics. And as you can see, the Northeast, Northwest, and Central, they account for about a third. And the South region account for 9%. It's not there?
There it is. There it is.
Oh, sorry. So, I'm sure most of you knew that the South has gotten smaller, but the size of the reduction may be not what you had expected. So in light of this statistic, is it still valid to distribute those leadership seats equally among those 4 regions? Maybe so, maybe not. And it's something for us to think about. One suggestion I have, it's kind of naive suggestion, but perhaps we could just redraw the boundaries of those regions. The South becomes larger, so geographically, and come closer to a 25% of the membership. Another way to do that is we can change how we distribute those leadership seats. Something for us to think about. Okay. moving on to the next item of interest, it's about nominating for the nominating committee. As you all know, nominating committee does not nominate their own members. We follow a different procedure to fill the seats of the nominating committee. And I inquired about it and found out that how it's done. It is those positions are filled by nomination by vice moderators of each region. I understand the rationale for doing that, but purely from a representation perspective, I question the wisdom of that. So it's something that we should revisit, and the suggestion that we make is perhaps half of those seats be rotated among congregations throughout the presbytery to make it more representative and make it more participatory. And we do have an excellent model when we nominate GA commissioners. We have a very elaborate system of going through each congregation and come up with the names of those nominees. Perhaps we could follow something similar to that scheme and fill half the seats of the nominating committee. Lastly, it's about leadership openings, how those positions are known to the members of this presbytery and members of the congregations. Currently, the openings that come up, the turnover occurs end of June. We all know that. But what positions are open are not known to most people. So the information about the turnover is not disclosed ahead of time. Perhaps it's time to publish those openings, perhaps in March meeting, so that people who are interested in filling those leadership roles can volunteer, and we'll have a larger pool of qualified individuals who can serve. Again, these are all draft recommendations, and I'll be seeking your feedback and reactions. And that concludes my report, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you very much. I think Nancy wanted to say something?
I just wanted to say that after the June meeting, a survey was developed. It was called The Personal Experience or Interest in Cross-Cultural Ministry. And the response of that is on page 26. There, however, is not noted on it. There's page 23, so it's 2 pages on there. That's the results. And unfortunately, there were only 1/3 of the churches that responded to this survey. And so my job on this committee of core is recruitment and nominating, and I'm going to be calling on you if you haven't turned in your survey.
Good deal. Thank you. Thank you all for your report. The moderator now recognizes Craig Butler for our report, our treasurer.
Thanks, Mike. Hello, everyone. I know it's 2 o'clock, and you had lunch just a while ago, and here they bring the numbers. Oops. But I'm going to talk about the financial statements. They start on page 6 in your background papers. Think of this as a really complicated parking meter to read, and I'm here to help you read that meter. And hopefully when you're done, you'll feel like putting some more coins in the meter, not writing me a ticket. Let's go to the first chart. I'm basically going to tell you that everything I told you at Mount Tabor about the financial statements at the end of April are still true for the financial statements at the end of August, although more so. That's the bottom line of this presentation. Since we last met, Our fixed assets, real estate, have increased to almost $4.9 million because we added the effect of St. Mark Pres, which dissolved earlier this year. So our real estate assets are now almost as large as the total of all our endowment accounts. And our overall assets now exceed $10 million. So that, a year ago, it was $5 million at this time. So that's a big change financially. Of more importance, however, is to note that both per capita and Presbytery partnership support are running a little less than we budgeted. It turns out that per capita has caught up very nicely. We're now 98.6% at the end of September. By the way, I have seen the September statements. I'll point out where they're a little different from the August. But again, September is just the same as August, even more so. But our mission giving at the end of September, we're 10% behind the budget. We were 8.9% behind at the end of August. So this has been a recurring theme except for last year. Last year we had a very good year in mission giving. We're back to where we were 2 years ago. We have 34 churches that pledged for mission giving in 2017 compared with 39 in 2016. In all, 61 of our 97 churches have thus far participated in giving, but again, we're still 10% behind our target. I will point out a couple places in the statements where the way we accounted for Lita Jernigan's severance, we budgeted for it to be taken monthly throughout this year. That's what we budgeted for, and then we found out that the accounting rules required us to take it as a lump sum, so we took it as a lump sum, and now there are variances. So when you look at the personnel numbers, don't get too worried about it. There are differences. It's almost completely over with as we've pretty much paid off that severance. By the end of this year, there will be no more lingering effect, and I don't have to bore you with it anymore. Next chart, please. So this is our various funds. If you'll recall, we separate administration from programs. Per capita feeds administration, mission giving feeds programs. And we keep them separate so that something going on in one fund doesn't affect something going on in the other. I originally had Fund 5 on this chart, the real estate or fixed assets, but if I left it on, it would be through the roof on this, so I took it off. So on the statement of financial position, all of the funds are currently positive, but some are behind what we budgeted. We're currently in an overall positive financial position. We have a total operating activity gain of $231,000 almost, excluding the real estate. Much of this is in designated funds, as we took over about $109,000 of investments from Oakland Community and Laurelhurst and St. Mark. But our Fund 1 in the administration has an increase in loans payable from the GA or grant mortgage from Laurelhurst and a Muzzy loan from St. Mark. So the new things on the statement you haven't seen before. The Reserve Fund 3 shows an operating activity gain of $22,703. That's largely because we're having a great year in the stock market. We are really having a great year in the stock market. And Fund 4 shows an even higher gain, $107,000 through the end of August. Again, the stock market has been great there. Next chart, please. Thanks, Steve. In the administration fund, we have received most of our per capita target for the year. In the past few months, we transferred $75,000 into this fund so we could pay back our GA surplus to the next General Assembly, number 223 in St. Louis, next summer. That pays back what we received from 221 so that we could start our work. Remaining $40,000 we kept in our unrestricted reserves. The program fund shows a small gain of $4,000 or so. On the revenue side, Presbytery partnership giving is $37,500 less than budgeted at the end of August and $48,700 less than budgeted by the end of September. that is made up for the fact that we haven't spent as much on programs as we budgeted. So if you walked away with nothing else from this talk, we're short on mission giving, and we're not spending it all as much as we should on programs. That's the bottom line. Otherwise, we'd have a big hole in this year's budget. Let's go to the next chart. Per capita payments to GA and Senate are pretty much on track. They're slightly down because we send a percentage to General Assembly, and when we don't take in as much in mission given, we don't send as much to General Assembly. We have had some higher administrative costs, mostly due to legal fees for dissolving congregations. You know, you got to record building ownership and mortgages and the like. But most of our committees have spent less than their budgets. Communication and meeting planning is over its budget, will be all year because they have additional professional fees. We converted their omnibus from an every 2-month publication to a monthly publication, and that was costs we hadn't planned for. We also bought some non-capital video streaming equipment. We have not spent very much so far this year in program ministry groups, as I said, and mostly this is the 1,001 worship communities who have not spent what they thought they would spend by this time this year. Next chart. Fund 3 are designated funds. It's good news here. These have increased $107,500, mostly due to increases in stocks and bonds. But we also had a decrease in restricted funds. I talked about the GA funds coming out. So the whole thing only went up about $30,000. The technology grant fund was given $30,000, and we have a little more than half of that left after we've made some grants. You know me, I always talk about Barnabas funds, and I sound like a broken record. But we're now down to we only have a year's worth left at our current spend rate after we just approved some, the last trustees and PLC meetings. And we need to look at recharging those at some point in the future. I don't have a chart on the Fund 4, the reserves and our endowment fund, but we're having a very good year in the stock market. We have 2 managers. Their combined results by the end of August were a 9% gain for the year, which is quite a nice gain and is in line with a mix of the market averages and between stocks and bonds. And so the last chart I wanted to show, next chart please, is what can you do at this point to help? Most of you are current in your per capita. If you're not, please get current. Every little bit helps. Big thing is increase your partnership giving if you can, this year and in next year's budget. This is the time to set next year's budget. Please include the Presbytery. Things like giving to General Assembly, to Synod, supporting our Warm Springs mission, our ecumenical missions, and a host of other programs you can read about on the page about Fund 3. You'll see what we all support. And if possible, please pledge that. Pledging that helps us plan better and know what we can spend and not spend. And that, Mr. Moderator and Mr. Clerk, is my parking report. Are there questions?
Please identify yourself and your church.
Yeah, Sarah Sanderson Dowdy, teaching elder at St. Andrews. I just wonder if you could elaborate a little bit more. If the partnership giving were to go up, mission pledges were to go up, what would be happening in the Presbytery that is not currently happening? In addition to those specific things you named, what would be possible with increased partnership giving?
Increased partnership giving would allow us to increase mission giving to the things I just named. First of all, every time we take in $1, I believe it's 25 or 30 cents that go to General Assembly's missions. We give a fixed amount to Synod each year, so that wouldn't increase immediately, but it would give us the confidence to increase it next year. It would increase the amount we could give to ecumenical ministries. It would increase the amount we could give to Warm Springs. And a lot of the other mission categories that in the past we gave to or we gave more significantly to, if we had the confidence through pledges that was coming in, we could look at raising those. Specifically, what it would do through the rest of this year is it would mean we would not have to take money out of our reserves to close a budget hole. That if every one of these programs spent what they budgeted to spend, we will have. So that's probably the most direct answer to your question.
Any
Anything
other
else?
questions?
Well, if you have something else for me, take me aside later, and thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you for your report. I invite Tam Moore from the Budget and Finance Committee to report on the 2018 budget proposals.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. We're going to talk about moving mission forward, and at the top, I want to tell you that the mission part of our budget is not sustainable unless we increase our giving. It's funded by transfer coming from our reserve. The reserves are going down. Your documentation is on page 18. And I'd like you to think first of all about what mission is. It's what God's people are doing in the world through the church and here in your congregations and wherever God's people are at work. We sometimes separate our budgets and say that Fund 1 we have and its administration and governance, and Fund 2 is mission. It's all about 1.4 million, almost 1.5 million for 2018. But very specifically, all of the support that goes in here is in fact mission, trying to make this a better place as we grow God's kingdom. So we have a couple of motions that we're going to bring to you. The first one is to set the 2018 portion of per capita at $19.05 and adopt the Fund 1 budget of $490,000. Per capita would go up, there we go, 34 cents. General Assembly per capita is going up 23 cents next year. If adopted, the combined 2018 per capita will be $32, which is a nice round number. We finally hit one. We've been working on that for a long time. So, Mr. Moderator, on behalf of the Budget and Finance Committee, I move to set the 2018 per capita at $19.05 and adopt the Fund 1 budget of $490,076.
Thank you, Tam. This comes from committee and needs no second. Is there any discussion? If you do have a question or choose to speak for or against this motion, please come to a microphone, introduce yourself, and where you're from. Are you ready for the question? Okay, so the motion is to set the 2018 Presbytery portion of per capita at $19.05 and to adopt the 2018 Fund 1 budget of $490,076. If you vote yes, if you vote in affirmative, please say yes. Yes. Those opposed, please say no. It is so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The next motion that will come to you in just a moment is to adopt the Fund 2 or the mission budget of $999,151. And I call your attention particularly to the resources that are going into this budget. Transfers, see that? $236,000? That's coming out of your reserve. That's coming out of your reserves in order to make this thing work. Presbyterian partnership giving, we conservatively estimated at about $620,000. Our investment earnings may be, in fact, a little bit higher. As you heard, the good stock market is continuing, and so we may do a little better than that, but that's where the money comes from. The next slide shows you where the money goes. General Assembly and Synod mission together. That's per capita and what we send to General Assembly, 180,000. The support personnel in Presbytery amount to $594,000. 1,001 worshiping communities. The new church development has 120,000. Our mission support to the Warm Springs Church and Ecumenical Ministries of Oregon is 32,000. And the rest of these, as we go down, are dedicated funds of one kind or another: peacemaking, hunger, self-development of people. They're money where we're sharing things from the General Assembly and putting programs together. And we have other dedicated ministries of about $40,000. So I would move adoption of the Fund 2 budget of $999,151.
Thank you. This comes from a committee, needs no second. Is there any discussion or questions? And please introduce yourself and where you're from.
David Hutchinson, St. Helens, Plymouth Presbyterian. Regards to this budget and the previous question from someone from St. Andrews, isn't part of the answer to the question, what could or couldn't we do if mission giving went up or down, less about the $32,000 for Warm Springs and more about the $600,000 for salaries?
Personnel can answer the salaries. The salary amount is all of the support for all of our congregations.
Do we have another comment or question?
So Lauren Bostwick from Central Presbyterian in Eugene. Tam, I'm just wondering, you mentioned that this is not a sustainable budget, and I'm wondering what conversation you're all having in the budget committee about what's going to happen in the years to come if mission giving doesn't go up.
We've been having conversations about this since before John Mahan, who I see sitting back there, left looking after our budget thing. And we did a serious conversation in 2010. We are at the phase where we need to do another serious conversation. And I hope that that's one of the things on the vision guy back there who's getting his report ready. We're ready to start talking. We have to face some realities, just as our General Assembly has to face some realities. If you caught the news a couple of weeks ago, they're looking at a $5 or $3 increase in per capita as a big bunch coming to the General Assembly for consideration. But we've got to look at the financial model and see what we can come up with.
Yes.
Zane Buxton, honorably retired member of Presbytery. I'm here mostly to say that I was part of those conversations for about 4 years on the Board of Trustees. And one of the bits of the conversation was about our need to recommit ourselves together as Presbyterians to doing things together. The division that is currently in place is really the congregations looking after themselves first, thinking about Presbytery, Synod, and General Assembly, including our worldwide mission and all of our mission efforts, including those young adult volunteers in mission, all the other kinds of things that we do. All of our congregations have to be committed to supporting those. And I draw from personal experience. I discover that if I give off of the top of my income, I live on the rest after I've made that commitment. If I wait till the end of a pay period to figure out what to give to the church, I don't have anything left to give to the church. I think if congregations start putting mission first in their budget, they will be encouraging the congregation to think in those terms as well. First Presbyterian Church went through the doldrums, everyone else did. I spent 4 years pushing the mission budget back up. It's not where it should be yet, but we keep moving it forward. I encourage every congregation to do some self-reflection about that.
Any other comments, questions, debate?
I'm Bill Russell. I'm also retired. And my question is that the one that was taking from the reserves, $200 and some thousand, how big a pool is that? I mean, how much is in the reserves that you're drawing the 200 and whatever it is out of?
Cheryl, help me. What's Fund 3 got in it?
Cheryl Anderson, business manager. That Fund 3 is on page 11. You'll see that we have under program net assets, program unrestricted reserves, currently $775,796. That amount fluctuates because it includes changes in market value. So that is the amount that we currently have to work with. However, if something happens in the market where we have another large correction, that number will go down significantly. So this is not a sustainable figure that you can count on. I would say probably half of that, 775,000, would be what is available. The rest is pretty much left up to market fluctuation.
Other questions, comments, debate? We have a motion on the floor. Are you ready for the question? All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed say no. The yeses have it and the motion is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to share with you again, we did this in June. Presbyterian Partnership Giving is providing missionary salaries and benefits through what we send on to General Assembly. It's huge. Gifts and grants, church partners, churches, hospitals, schools. It supports educators, administrators, doctors, nurses, the Christians who are carrying out God's work and carry the good news to God's children here, and in the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for your report. Yeah, you can applaud if you want. They do a lot of hard work for us, as do a lot of the rest of you. Okay, let me see. Wow, we're ahead of schedule. Oh, don't say that. Don't say that? Okay. I guess that was out of order, right? Okay, next I would call on June Carlson to present the Presbytery Leadership Commission report.
He said, don't say we're ahead of schedule. June's coming up. We'll fix that.
Is that what you said?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm June Carlson, formerly, oh yeah, I can lower it so I can talk into it. Does that work? Yeah. Okay. Yes, I'm short. So I used to be moderator, now I'm chair of the Presbytery Leadership Commission.
But you got the bigger podium. I don't understand this.
You gave it to me.
She's content, your process.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Content trumps process, right?
That's right.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I lost my place already. So I'm going to refer to the Presbyterian Leadership Commission as the PLC. So get that now because I won't say it longer again. The PLC is a committee or a commission that has chairs of many of the committees that comprise its membership. And I won't go into the list because I don't have it in front of me. Thank you, Mr. Stated Clerk. We met in October 6 and 7, and we bring 2 motions to this body for consideration. The first item was referred to the Leadership Commission in September and at the special meeting in September in Eugene, if you recall, and concerns the motion to amend the position description title for the Presbytery for Vision and Mission to Executive Presbytery. The Leadership Commission recommends that you vote no on this motion.
Okay, so the motion is to amend something previously adopted by Presbytery, namely the position description for Presbytery for Vision and Mission. The Presbytery received previous notice of this motion at its special meeting so that its adoption requires a simple majority of those voting. The motion is to amend by striking Presbytery for Vision and Mission and replacing it with Executive Presbytery. Is there discussion? And if you wish to discuss, please come to a microphone, introduce yourself and where you're from.
Mr. Moderator, I'm Linda Stewart Kalin. I am a Minister of Word and Sacrament from Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church, currently serving there. I would agree with the recommendation to vote no. We are in a process of understanding how leadership is different for the context that we face today than it was at some other point in our history. The very term executive presbyter speaks to an era that asked pastors and leaders in the church to serve more like CEO kinds of business titles and less like who we are. I think it's very helpful for us to have a different language and a different title. I do not worry at all that that is not going to speak across the various nomenclature that we find across the country. If we did a survey today of what leaders within presbyteries are called now, you would find a great variety. We have, by selecting Presbytery for Mission and Vision, or Vision and Mission, whichever you choose, we have chosen to say, this is not a person who we say, this person is at the top and the buck stops there, and so the responsibility of success or failure is with that particular person. It is more like the charge that we have with our deacons in our congregation, who encourage our congregation members, who encourage all of us to witness, service, and compassion. This presbytery, if it does not have a vision, if it does not have a mission, is going to need to own that, share that, develop that together. And the presbyter that we have called to keep that before us and to encourage us to engage in that work is rightly called a presbyter for mission and vision.
Thank you. Someone else like to speak to this motion? Okay, so are you ready to vote? The motion is to amend the position description title by replacing Presbytery for Vision and Mission with the title Executive Presbyter. And again, the PLC recommends a no vote. So those in favor, please say yes. Yes. Those opposed, please say no. No. The noes have it. The motion is defeated. Okay, so the next item of business also...
What does that mean?
What? The motion is lost. It means that the title will not be changed. It will remain Presbytery for Vision and Mission.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Did you all understand what we just voted on? Okay.
You all did, thank you.
Don't say yes, just say no. Okay. All right, the next item of business also comes from the Leadership Commission. Take it away.
At the June 2017 Presbytery meeting, the following motion was referred to the Presbytery Leadership Commission. And it said, the Presbytery forgive any remaining debt owed to the Presbytery by Genesis Fellowship. Encourage all Presbytery of the Cascades congregations to seek partnership ministries with racial ethnic congregations and organizations. And 3, to set aside $200,000 received from the sale of the Genesis Fellowship property to fund these partnership efforts through grants awarded by the Committee on Representation. As chair of the PLC, I was tasked with creating a subcommittee to study the motion and report to PLC. You can see the fruit of this group on pages 25 and in the following background papers. That subcommittee presented their work on the motion to the PLC at its October meeting, which was October 6 and 7, and the PLC amended the motion, which it now proposes as a substitute motion for the original. The substitute motion reads as follows. 1, $300,000, excuse me.
30.
Excuse me. Down. I'm sorry. I get carried away. What's a zero? $30,000 from unrestricted reserves be designated to create a fund to encourage Presbyterian entities to partner in cross-cultural ministry. Number 2, establish an oversight group made up of the Committee on Representation and Board of Trustees members, guided by the mission of the Committee on Representation to develop the goals, objectives, process, and criteria of this program. And 3, to encourage congregations and other entities within the Presbytery to continue moving forward with cross-cultural partnerships, and for those interested to donate to the Cross-Cultural Partnership Fund.
Okay, the substitute motion comes from a committee, does not require a second. The process of amending by substitution is shown on the slide and is as follows. First, we will consider the amendments, if any, to the original motion, which was referred to the Leadership Commission. After we have voted on any proposed amendments to that motion, then we will consider any amendments to the substitute motion. This process allows the Assembly to have fully formed alternatives before making a decision. As you can see, after both motions have been perfected, that is, amended to the satisfaction of the Assembly, then we can debate and vote on whether the substitute motion becomes the main motion. And if the noes have it, then the substitute is lost and we would vote in the original motion. If the yeses have it, then the substitute motion is now the main motion, which is voted on to see if it passes or fails. So we will get to the substitute motion, but first we're going to consider the main motion, any amendments that may need to be made. And so here we go. Adventures in Robert's Rules, right? So are there any amendments to the main motion, which is the following? That the Presbytery forgive any remaining debt owed to the Presbytery by Genesis Fellowship, encourage all Presbytery of Cascades congregations to seek partnership ministries with racial ethnic congregations and organizations, to set aside $200,000 received from the sale of Genesis Fellowship property to fund these partnership efforts through grants awarded by the Committee on Representation. So does anyone have an amendment to this motion?
Mr. Moderator, Jeff Sievert, Minister of Word and Sacrament, the Reedville Church. I'm just a little bit confused about the process. First of all, please remind me what was the status of this original motion? Did Presbytery not act on it at our last?
Presbytery referred it to PLC.
Okay, so the motion came to the floor, and rather than acting on it, we referred it to PLC.
That's correct. And,
okay.
And PLC is returning it to us with two motions, with the original motion and a substitute that's recommended by the PLC.
Okay, so if we do nothing to address it in this original motion, and the substitute motion becomes the main motion, does the part about forgiving remaining debt go away?
It could be added
So
to
it
the
could
other
be
motion.
added to the substitute motion.
There are lots of things that could happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. But there is no, Yeah.
Mr. Moderator, can I make a point of information?
Yeah, please introduce yourself more.
So there is no remaining debt. That debt
Okay.
was paid off actually in May, and so there is no remaining debt. I don't know that we need to amend the motion because of that, but I think that's an important point of information for everyone
Okay.
to have in this
Thank you, Sarah.
consideration.
That's Sarah Lewis from Piedmont. We have someone else that'd like to speak?
David Morelli, honorably retired. The difference between setting aside $200,000 and $30,000, will that be addressed as to what the difference is and what will be used? $170,000 difference. Will that be addressed under the substitute motion or should be addressed now?
You can certainly ask
Okay, I'm asking.
about the difference, but that probably might be more, we could probably speak to that now, if you would like to answer that question, June.
I think as PLC was deliberating, it was thought that this is a new proposal for the Presbytery to consider, and there was a lot of details in programmatically how you set up that program to provide grants and make them available, and there's work needed with the people that they might be granted to help formulate that program. And so it was almost seen as a, correct me if I'm wrong here, a trial or a 1 year or 2 year introduction to a program of cross-cultural ministry that if it worked and worked well, then it could be considered for expansion in the future. Craig, you're shaking your head right. Okay, thank you. So it was thought of as a good idea that we wanted to step into somewhat gingerly at the beginning and then build on successes.
Okay, I'm in a lot. We're a little bit off the. We're not making amendments, but I think the information is important. So,
yeah,
yes.
Craig Butler, treasurer. So I caused a lot of the trouble here. I pointed out at the PLC that there was no proposal in front of us for how actually to spend even $1. And much of the PLC's discussion was that it is not necessarily appropriate to spend any money to reach the goals that we're trying to reach with this effort and fund. And that you really have to think carefully about, does the application of funds actually cause something good to happen? So what we wanted to do was take some time here and really work out what the fund looks like and what its parameters are, and make sure we had a good proposal to go for the first one. I think I was telling the body what the PLC
I would
said.
rule that Craig was explaining the PLC process. So if we have debate about the amounts of the motion, that is more appropriate when we get back to figuring out what the main motion is going to be. So unless you have an amendment to propose right now, I would ask that you leave the microphone.
Jess Evert, the Reedville Church. In interest of good process hygiene, I move that we delete the first bulleted item from the original motion.
Okay. So we have an amendment that would delete the first item on the original motion. And we have a second? Would anybody like to speak to that amendment? All right. So we have an amendment that is now on the floor. That is our primary item of business, and we're going to vote whether or not that amendment changes the motion. So the amendment is to delete the first bullet, which is about forgiving any remaining debt. It's been clarified that there is no remaining debt, correct? So this makes some sense. So all in favor of deleting the first bullet as amendment, please say aye. Yes? Yes. All opposed say no. It carries. So the motion is now what is in front of you minus the first item. Is there someone else that would like to make an amendment?
Linda Stewart Kalen, Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church, Minister of Word and Sacrament. I just need, for my own clarification, my understanding is that the last bullet point with the $200 set aside that had been received from the, 200,000, set aside from the sale of Genesis was in fact a statement of saying, we will not profit from the relationship that we had with an African American congregation that we entered into this. So I'm perfectly happy with understanding that as it is, to be perfected as it was presented. And so I'm wondering if we couldn't say that is perfected, because it sounds like we're talking about clarifications of things instead.
Right. Well, it'd be perfected when there are no more amendments. So
Okay.
you're not proposing an amendment.
I'm
Okay.
I'm suggesting that it's been perfected as it was presented.
All right. That's, yeah, go ahead.
Moderator, Zane
Yes.
Buxton again. Because of the information given to us about the nature of our reserves, the $200,000 is part of the reserves of the Presbytery. It is an unconscionable amount of money to set aside for an unformed project. I suggest that this motion be amended to say no more than $50,000, so that I would substitute $50,000 for $200,000.
Okay. So there's been an amendment proposed. Is there a second? Second. That the amount in bullet number 3 be changed to no more than 50,000. Was that correct? So you want to speak to the amendment?
I want to speak against the amendment.
Okay.
I think it would be clearer to perfect and then to make the substitute motion, the main motion, if you wanted to do that. Because I think the intent of the $200,000 received from the sale of Genesis is specifically to put before the body, not profiting from selling a building to an African American congregation who was seeking to have a ministry in an area that we do not have with a population that we do not have. So I think as the motion stands, it makes a statement about the profit, our reserve fund growing based on a relationship, a financial relationship that we had with a vulnerable congregation, a minority congregation doing ministry in an area that we are not doing ministry with a population that we are not doing ministry with. So I would speak against the amendment to this motion, and if someone seeks to do what Zane spoke of, I think it would be cleaner to vote for the substitute motion.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak to the amendment to change this amount to no more than 50,000?
John L. Stock, honorably retired. I'd like to speak to it, and particularly because I'm hearing some numbers thrown around and with some false assumptions. The assumption is that all of the money that came from the sale of Genesis went into our reserves. That is not accurate. 1/3 went into the Barnabas Fund and was distributed to many of the congregations sitting here. 1/3 of it was placed in what was then the New Church Development Fund, and 1/3 was placed into reserves.
Thank you for that clarification, John. So anyone else want to speak to the amendment?
I don't know the exact amount, but I think overall, David Hutchinson,
yeah.
St. Helens, Plymouth, I think overall, since the very beginning, the amount Presbytery received for the building is more like $500,000. It's not, the 200 was the final thing to complete the thing, but they've been paying for years.
Thank you, David. Just a reminder to please speak to the moderator and not to the congregation. Anyone else to speak to the amendment? The amendment is to modify the amount in bullet number 3 to read no more than $50,000. Are you ready to vote? All in favor of the amendment, please say yes. Yes. All opposed to the amendment, please say no. No. The noes have it. Any further amendments to this motion? Yes.
Zane Buxton, I move the first motion be considered perfected.
Okay? So we have a motion that the first motion be considered perfected. That means we're finished with amending it. All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed say no. Okay, so the original motion is perfected. Now we are dealing with the motion from the Presbytery Leadership Commission. And that motion is as follows. One, that $30,000 from unrestricted reserves be designated to create a fund to encourage Presbytery entities to partner in cross-cultural ministry. Number two, to establish an oversight group made of Committee on Representation and Board of Trustees members, guided by the mission of the Committee on Representation to develop goals, objectives, process, and criteria of this program. And three, encourage congregations and other entities within the Presbytery to continue to move forward with cross-cultural partnerships for those interested to donate to the Cross-Cultural Partnership Fund. So that's the motion we are now perfecting. So we're now doing as we did before, proposing any amendments.
Mr. Moderator, David Hutchinson, St. Helens Plymouth Presbyterian. Following Zane Buxton's lead, I move number 1 be amended to $50,000.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to change that amount to $50,000? Okay. Now it's open for discussion. We kind of already talked about it a little bit because there was rationale for the first one being changed to that amount.
So, David Morelli, honorably retired. So the unrestricted reserves, that's where that 200,000 is being put, and now we're going to take out 50,000 to use for cross-cultural ministry when that $200,000 was given to us or procured, or however you want to say, from a cross-cultural ministry. And as we said, therefore, we are taking 150,000 or 200,000 into unrestricted funds that can be used for anything, and slowly dribbling out money for cross-cultural ministry. And I think that's wrong. I hope that we vote down the substitute motion and stay with. Okay, I'll amend it back to $200,000 if we have to.
No, we have a motion on the floor, so we can't do.
Well, I'm against the 50,000.
Okay, so you're speaking against the amendment. Thank you. Anyone else speaking for or against the amendment from 30 to 50,000?
Bobby Neeson, minister member from Bandon. The PLC discussion, I think, is pertinent here, and I want to reiterate what our thinking was. For too long, the dominant culture's response to need in minority cultures was throw money at it. And quite frankly, most of the churches in the Presbytery that are already engaged in significant cross-cultural ministry are not doing it with a lot of dollars, but with a lot of time, a lot of effort, and an ability to talk and listen to one another. And our thinking as a group, and my thinking personally, is that that is what we need to be giving to one another. We will give a little bit. We will have a pot of money to see if we can seed some of those discussions, and there is room for growth if it works. But the purpose here is to make relationships, and relationships are not based on money.
Someone else want to make a comment about the amendment, either for or against it? Okay, sounds like you're ready to vote. So we're voting now on the amendment to change the amount up here from 30,000 to 50,000. All in favor of the amendment, please say yes. Yes. All opposed to the amendment, please say no. No. The noes have it. So as it is, we still have the original motion without any amendments. Anyone else want to make an amendment to this substitute motion? Okay, seeing that there is no discussion, let us vote that it has been perfected. That is the way in which we wish to have it read. All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed say no. All right, so we now have two motions. And first we're going to vote on whether the substitute motion, which was proposed by PLC, should replace the main motion. Okay? Does anybody want to speak to that? That the substitute motion become the main motion? All right, then it sounds like you're ready to vote. All in favor of the substitute motion, the one that comes from PLC, becoming the main motion, please say yes. Yes. All opposed to the substitute motion becoming the main motion, please say no. No. Okay, the yeses have it. So now we have before us the substitute motion that is now the main motion. Okay? And the substitute motion is what we just discussed. That the 3 points that, I'll read it for you again. $30,000 from the unrestricted fund reserves be designated to create a fund to encourage Presbytery entities to partner in cross-cultural ministry. 2, to establish an oversight group made of Committee on Representation and Board of Trustees members guided by the mission of the Committee on Representation to develop goals, objectives, process, and criteria of this program. And 3, encourage congregations and other entities within the Presbytery to continue to move forward with cross-cultural partnerships for those interested to donate to the Cross-Cultural Partnership Fund. All in favor? Well, okay, so are there any amendments to this motion? Okay. Any debate? Okay, any debate? Yeah, we've already perfected it. So any debate about this motion? Yes. All right, so I think I saw Greg moving first. So.
Greg Neal, one of the pastors at Westminster in Portland. I'm going to kick and scream and vote yes in favor of this very watered down motion. It's a shame. It's a shame that a very dynamic, visionary thought was ruled no by the PLC. I believe we can trust each other at a much higher level, financially, emotionally, theologically. It's a really sad moment for me to have to say, yep, I'm voting for this without any enthusiasm. It is my hope, it's my prayer that this presbytery will actually not only give some energy to this, but not have the trustees and core be the gatekeepers. I do not want gatekeeping. This is an opportunity to be open and wide. I will be voting yes.
Thank you, Greg. Yes.
Linda Stewart Kalin, Colonial Heights Presbyterian Church, Minister of Word and Sacrament. I too will reluctantly vote yes, but I hope that there will be some further discussion and recognition along the lines of appropriate reparations for the relationships that we have with our non-majority brothers and sisters in the area. We are, as a presbytery, over the 20 years that I have been here, still only putting a baby toe in the water. Even with all of the work and the surveys that you saw, we have not had, in truth, significant and meaningful engagement that would allow us to be humbled and understand the kind of need for reparations that I think the original motion came out of and gave rise to. And so I will, as I said, reluctantly vote yes for this minimal, maybe second toe in the water.
Thank you. Barbara, were you wanting?
Barbara Campbell, previously from St. Mark, her memory is a blessing, and now at Covenant in Gresham as interim pastor. So at the PLC, I just want to second what we heard about the discussion there. Having come from a congregation that spent almost zero and did more cross-cultural partnership, I think, than maybe any other congregations in the presbytery. The idea that if we just had $200,000, we could get all our congregations doing cross-cultural stuff rubbed me the wrong way. And in a time when our presbytery needs to have program monies in a lot of places, we can do what we're saying we want to do very well with $30,000. We can do it with $0 if we want to. And I hate to see us become motivated simply because we're giving a lot of money to it. It doesn't mean that the $170,000 that's going to go back to reserves can't be used in some way to honor the ministries of Genesis and to help us. Maybe they go to new church development or whatever. It can still, those monies can still be used in good ways, but we don't need to put $200,000 thinking that will, if we just, it's like saying if we just pay them, then they'll get motivated to speak to their neighbors. That's not, money is not going to do that. The motivation has to come from someplace else. And I'm all for doing something to make that motivation happen, and if the core or trustees can help us figure out how to make that happen, what sort of a process to build for that, and if they need some money to make that happen, that's great. But it's not, 200,000 or 30,000 is not going to make it happen unless a congregation wants it to happen.
Thank you. It wasn't real clear whether you were speaking for or against the motion there, Barbara. So, okay. So let's keep our comments to those for and against the motion. Okay. So I think I saw Bill first.
Okay. I'm Bill Russell. I'm still honorably retired. And I want to concur with the previous speakers, most recently, especially the last one. And I wish, or I hope, that there's some way that there can be an accountability back to this presbytery at our next meeting as to what has been done in light of what, if this motion passes. Since we're spending, obviously it's a commitment of this body to single out this area of mission as very important. I concur with that wholeheartedly. So let's put a little pressure on these bodies that are taking the motion to be accountable to the presbytery for what they have done in the interim period with this offering that is being presented them in the motion. I would like to have stuck that in that motion somehow, and I just hope that the bodies will, of their own wisdom, choose to do so. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, he's either before.
I'm in favor of the motion.
Okay. Yeah.
For the same reasons, that's why I said
Right.
I concur with the previous speaker.
You know, I saw Phyllis move up earlier. Are you wanting to speak?
Well, you know,
I'm sorry,
Presbyterians, do we ever agree on anything? I'm thrilled with the motion. I came from Southern Cal, where diversity was pretty common, you know, and you get up here, oh, we're pretty lily white, and to have this core, that report today was outstanding. I can't wait to get further involved in that. I just think it's wonderful what we're doing. It may be step one. I don't have anything to do about the money. We have a little tiny Hispanic church meeting with us. We haven't spent a dime. Well, I guess we do pay electric bill. But, you know, I'm agreeing that money's not an issue. The idea is get us doing something, thinking about it. There's going to be a report they're going to report whether we're here or not. Whoa, this could be good. I'm for it.
Okay, David?
Mr. Moderator, David Moat, honorably retired. I move the previous question.
Okay, so we've had a motion to end debate. Needs no second, right? Or that was seconded? Okay. Are you ready to end debate? All in favor say yes. Yes. All opposed say no. Okay, debate has concluded. We now are voting on the motion with these 3 points. Do you need me to read it again? No. Okay, all right. All in favor of this motion say yes. Yes. All opposed to this motion say no. Okay.
Vote
Do you
early,
wish
vote
your yes
often.
and no to be recorded? The motion passes. All right. So are there other items in
Yes.
the report?
Yes.
Please proceed.
I'll keep it short. I'm now off script, so I will talk to you just in conversation here. As you all know, I've been on kind of a learning curve for the last year or so plus. And as I left the moderator role and took the PLC chair role, I said to our stated clerk, so what do I do now? What's my job? What's the role of the PLC? What is it? What do they do? What's their responsibility? What's their decision-making authority? And he said, well, it's all in the stated rules and the bylaws, and it kind of was. And I asked other people, and they said, I don't know. So I asked him to please sort of put together a briefing book or a summary of what the PLC is and does and its responsibility. And not everything was well known by folks on the PLC. There's new members, they rotate a few of them every year. So I decided to host the beginnings of a strategic planning session. Now, Brian was still in transport from Nepal or wherever to get back here. So we didn't want to do anything that he would want to reverse or make decisions. But what I wanted to do was to get our heads wrapped around who are we and what do we do and how do we interact with other committees and commissions within the Presbytery and kind of build a foundation from which he can launch his efforts in a concerted way. So I started out by saying at this commission meeting in October, so what does the PLC do? And what are our responsibilities? And some of them that came out, not in any kind of order, right? This is brainstorming with a flip chart. A sounding board for the Presbytery for Vision and Mission, a wider perspective, act on behalf of the Cascades Presbytery in the absence of these meetings, coordinate committees, articulate or help articulate and develop vision, set agenda, location, and dates for Presbytery meetings, develop recommendations for Cascades Presbytery consideration and deliberation, hire, fire staff, deliberate issues at the direction of the Presbytery. You'll notice a lot of overlap with committees and commissions because they all need to kind of, not one person can do everything. Deliberate or approve trustees' actions, set strategic goals, provide budgetary oversight, and appoint commissions for congregations seeking dismissal. There were a few others that didn't ever get onto the whiteboard, and I don't recall what they were, so we're not going to hear those today. Then I kind of went through this exercise, and you'll see my transportation background popping to the fore here. But I drew a circle, kind of like a pie or a wheel, and put some pieces to the pie, and said, so all of those activities that we just listed, if we could categorize those and kind of grade ourselves on how we think we're doing. So if we're not doing very well at all, we'll say 0, and it will be a line in the middle of the pie, or the middle of the wheel. And if we think we're doing really well in this one sector of work, then we'll give ourselves a 10, and that will be on the outside of the wheel. And the thought is, if you're well-functioning and doing well, that you're going to see an 8 or 9 or 10 on all of these pie-shaped pieces, and you've got a large wheel that's fairly smooth around, and it takes minimal or some effort to move it forward. And one motion like this will move you a ways. If you say 0, 1, or 2 for everything, then it's about this big, And you can pedal like crazy and not get very far. It's a smooth ride, but you're not going to get very far. So if that's my transportation part of me coming out, you know. So, and if you have an 8 or a 9 in one sector and a 2 in one sector and a 3 over here, you're going to go clunk-de-clunk. And it's just clunky and not very effective. So we did that sort of, some call it a wheel of life, some call it just the pie-shaped chart. And one of the things that we scored ourselves, not just this committee, but kind of overall, what are we not doing as well as some other things? And one of them was, of course, the vision. So we have a new person that we are just now bringing on board, and we want to provide as much support to him as is needed and helpful to help create and then implement a vision. So that's one component. The other component is communication, that we gave ourselves, you know, kind of down there in the middle of the center is not really doing all that well. So we spent some time talking about that and looking at ways that we can improve our communication, me with you, other committees with other committees, or not just me, but the PLC with you, and with all member congregations and people within the Cascades Presbytery, because it's more than just us sitting here, right? So Cascades Connections, a series of small bit articles that you might see appearing more frequently, reports at Presbytery meetings, ta-da. Perhaps more open space discussions, and to communicate respect, because I'm not sure we always do that. And then to bring the discussions to individual session meetings at congregation level, and to encourage all of us from congregations to take these communications and discussions back to our session meetings. So that's some of those things. There's others, but I don't have as much time as I might have. That I intend, and I think the PLC agrees, that we intend to focus on over the next year. But I would say communication is huge. That's my kind of bailiwick. But I also do this in support of the new directions that we're all taking and hoping to take with the actions of our new Presbytery for Vision and Mission. And we want to just show our support for him. So thank you very much. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, June. Are there any questions for June? Thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Okay, the Presbytery will now take a break. Please be back at 3:20, and it looks like the stated clerk wants to say something.
Briefly, if you get a chance during the break, there is a box or a basket of 3x5 cards, if you can imagine what those look like. White, oh, you have one, thank you. Downstairs, and there's some instructions to fill them out, to share your thoughts about your hopes and thoughts of gratitude for our Presbytery. They'll be used during the evening or late afternoon worship. So go downstairs, grab a card, fill it out, put it in the basket.
Did you have an announcement? No? Okay. Be back by 3:20. Thanks. Yet. My mic's on. Oh, there we go. The Presbytery will now return to order, please. Where's my gavel when I need it? All right. We now have the report of the Board of Trustees, and John Ailstock will now present that report. Thanks, John.
Earlier during the treasurer's report,
Is this on? Yep.
earlier during the the treasurer's report, you heard Craig talk a little bit about the Barnabas Fund, and I'd like to add a little bit to that. I'd first like to tell you what the Barnabas Fund is for, and I'll just read this to you. The purpose of the Barnabas Fund is to encourage and extend the ministry of the local congregation and presbytery in 3 ways. 1, provide limited and emergency capital loans and/or grants for congregations needing immediate and critical assistance. 2, provide limited support for the mission and program needs of churches and the Presbytery of the Cascades. 3, provide emergency or maintenance funds for presbytery property. Historically, and this is just in my memory, I've been a trustee on and off for about 13 years, the Barnabas Fund has been seeded with funds from gifts from departing churches and sale of property within the congregation or within the presbytery. In 2016, we made grants to congregations in the amount of $132,894. So far this year, we have given grants of $85,943. Trustees have been very pleased and happy to be able to do that. But unfortunately, we've been so generous with it that the fund is now facing depletion if we can continue giving grants at the same rate. And we now have about $70,000, $80,000 left in the Barnabas Fund, and we felt that until we find a way to repopulate that fund with monies, we need to take a different approach, and so we have decided to limit grants to those congregations that can demonstrate a need, i.e. that they would not be able